Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I guess it's lunchtime. My name is Samantha Busa. I'm one of the clinical psychology postdoctoral fellows here at the NYU Child Study Center. I work primarily on our anxiety and mood service and also work on our gender and sexuality service. Today, I'm going to be talking to you all about parental self-care and how to take time to recharge. So, the first point I want to make is if you have been on a trip recently or been on an airplane recently or have ever been on an airplane in your lifetime, you've probably heard sort of the safety directions in the beginning. And what the flight attendants typically stress is this idea that if something were to happen and the masks were to come down from the airplane, you're supposed to take care of yourself first before you take care of any child near you. And so this idea is that taking care of yourself is not a selfish act. It's more so to say that we can't take care of others if we're not adequately taking care of ourselves. And so today's sort of presentation is really to help parents tune into why taking care of themselves is just so important. So first I want to talk about what self-care is. We throw this term out a lot, and also talk about why we're so bad at it. This is the idea, so self-care is the idea of identifying your own needs and making steps to meet them, or taking steps to make yourself feel like you are caring for yourself. There are a lot of themes of self-care. So this could be physical, psychological self-care, spiritual self-care, intellectual self-care, and we're going to talk about all of these a little bit later today. But again, this is the idea of taking care of yourself as you would take care of others. I think we're all much better of taking care of our friends, family members, kids than we are of ourselves. We're much harder on ourselves than we are on others. And it may feel counterintuitive to maintaining your day-to-day, but the idea is that really being mindful of taking care of yourself. We also know that there are a lot of benefits of self-care, and this idea of engaging in self-care can actually decrease stress, can make you feel more positive about your day-to-day life, and help you feel more confident. In terms of parental stress specifically, if you are a parent, stress is really, really common. It's not something that, I would be surprised to hear any parent coming into my office. I would actually be more surprised to hear a parent saying, oh, I'm not stressed at all. And stress can come from anywhere. It can come from economic hardship. It can come from marital conflict. It can come from, conflict in your social circles, insufficient support systems, teachers, so stress, related to the teachers at your child's school. And it can lead to a couple of different outcomes. So it could lead to parental mental health issues like depression or anxiety, more marital conflict, less effective parenting strategies, child behavior problems, and poor physical health. And so this is to say that parental stress is important to be mindful of, because the more stressed you are, the more negative outcomes can actually happen. And I want you guys to think about, when you're feeling stressed, how well do you function? Do you are you feeling good about the things that you're doing on a day-to-day? When you're more stressed, are you more productive? For some people, yes, but there is this level of stress that does become, detrimental in some ways. We know that self-care can help decrease stress in general, and so I want to talk a little bit first about some of the benefits of self-care itself. So this is the idea that engaging in wellness activities can actually promote resilience. And what that means is that by decreasing your stress, you're actually more likely to be able to bounce back quicker from stressful events in your life. So that could be from if you have a bad day at work, being able to sort of bounce back and come home and be more mindful and be less stressed in that moment. We also know that having more positive emotions can increase the perceptions of someone's life satisfaction. So just being able to say, I feel good about my life and the things that I'm doing, even though I'm feeling super stressed about everything that's going on. It can broaden our attention and our thinking, so it can actually help us focus better in our work. So again, decreasing stress can actually help you perform better, do things more efficiently, and help you feel like you can cope more with situations. In addition, wellness is also associated a lot with mindfulness, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but practicing mindfulness can also decrease anxiety, decrease depression, decrease judgments of the self, improve self-management, and improve emotion regulation. So all of this is to say that taking care of yourself can actually make you sort of a more complete person in general. And I think it's so important to remember that, because I think when we are kind of faced with, do I take care of myself? Do I take care of someone else? We always are choosing somebody else. So taking care of yourself is really important. So for parents who have children with mental health issues and disabilities, this is especially important. There is evidence and a couple of studies that have been done that show that parents who have children with disabilities and mental health issues are at greater risk for having stress and greater risk for having, high levels of stress that get in the way of their parenting. And what we also know is that there is some research that says that high levels of parenting stress can actually lead to less progress in developmental goals for their child. So this idea that what you do and how you parent, the amount of stress that you have actually impacts how your child is developing and how they're making progress. And this does not change based on age. So this can be from infancy until young adulthood. Kids are really perceptive. They pick up when their parents are stressed, and they don't know how to help you. And so really what you have to do is be mindful of that and be able to take care of yourself. Of course, parenting is a really stressful job, and having a child with a disability is especially stressful because you're managing appointments, trying to figure things out with the teachers, and sometimes you feel like you're being asked to act like a superhero but don't have sort of a Superman cape to do that. And so being mindful of stress and being aware of the impact that it has on your child can really actually help take that first step to decrease your own stress. We also know that parent stress can put families at risk for child behavior problems, and so being able to intervene yourself, and I'm going to give some tips on self-care, can actually help you help your child in the best way possible. So just to sort of summarize here, parental self-care is super important. Parents are stressed, and when we aren't engaging in self-care, we're actually modeling for our kids. And modeling is this idea that kids watch what we do. They're super perceptive, and if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're saying that taking care of our bodies and overextending ourselves is actually something that we should be doing rather than something that we wouldn't recommend. And if we're not engaging in self-care, we might be more irritable, more exhausted, more sad. I'm sure everyone on this webinar can think of a time where, everything went wrong during the day, and then going home to have to parent going home to parent or picking your child up from school feeling like, oh my goodness, I have so much to do, and just feeling exhausted in general can lead to just lower energy, lower optimism. And what I like to tell parents to think about is, when you're hiring a babysitter or a nanny or someone to help out at home, or even, thinking of a family member to help out, do we want someone who's going to be irritable, exhausted, or sad, or do we want someone who's going to be cheerful and happy and energetic? I think most people would answer that, yes, I want an energetic person who's going to be engaged. And so helping yourself take care to be more happy and more energetic by practicing some of these self-care tips can actually lead to you being a parent that, you feel proud of on a day-to-day basis. And we all have bad days, but just remembering that self-care is so important. So how do we do this? I'm going to talk about a number of different types of self-care today. So physical self-care, social and emotional self-care, intellectual self-care, and spiritual self-care. And we think of these as sort of comprehensive. We want to help someone reach life balance when we're recommending self-care. As someone who's a therapist myself, taking care of myself is also important too. And so we think about self-care as just being important for everyone. They teach classes on how to do your own self-care as therapists, and I think we need to do a better job of helping parents, make that time for self-care. So in terms of physical needs, these may seem really obvious, but this idea of finding time to exercise, making sure that you're having balanced sleep, getting that 8 to 10 hours is so important. And we know that that's not always possible, but finding ways to be sure that you're getting as much sleep as you need. Exercising, you can exercise on your own, but if, you have small children and want to sort of go to the park with your kids and exercise in that way, that's also great too. It doesn't need to be sort of taking time away from your family, but making sure that you're making time for yourself. Balancing your eating, even if it's making just a small change to cut out, processed sugars or whatever it is that you want to try that week to help yourself feel like you're doing things in a more balanced way. Physical affection is actually shown to really release chemicals in our brain that make us feel good. So hugging your child, hugging your partner, hugging and being affectionate with the ones that you love in your life. Even taking a hot shower or a bath. I know that, parents always say, there's not enough time to do everything in the day, and I'm the last person that's going to get a shower, but making sure that you are able to do that and make it an enjoyable experience. Even if you want to make your cup of tea or coffee in the morning, that experience as well. I know for myself, I love to just sort of sometimes go out in a day that's especially stressful and get a cup of coffee and enjoy that cup of coffee. Try not to multitask while you're drinking it, being able to take the time to, just enjoy it and enjoy the sensation of having it. Another way is, going for a long walk outdoors. So these are some examples of how to take care of some of those physical needs. And again, just remembering that anything that you do, being able to label it as something that you're doing for yourself can even just increase your feelings of taking care of yourself. We also want to make time for our social supports. I think this is incredibly important because social support actually decreases stress. So it actually changes the relationship between stress and parenting. So having someone who you can confide in, someone that you can talk about your stresses with, is associated with lower levels of parental stress. And this is incredibly hard to do if you're working or even if you're at home. Being able to find time that's mutually beneficial for you and your friend or someone else in your life. Spending time with friends is incredibly important, and there are a lot of ways to do that. So it's possible that if your child has a friend who also has parents that you get along with, making sure that you're setting up those play dates where maybe both of the parents are there and able to spend time with each other to kind of reminisce about being parents and some of the stresses. And it's also important to find ways to spend time alone. I think we take for granted those alone times and being in a space that we're able to do whatever it is that we want to do without the stresses of having anyone else around. In addition, we want people to be able to take care of their intellectual needs as well. I think sometimes, parents will say, I just don't have time to do the things that I used to love. And so there are a number of ways to meet some of those intellectual needs, so related to your interests and related to sort of stimulating your brain. So some suggestions that we have here are, taking your child to the library. This is something that, many, many families do. But the next time you're there, instead of only looking at some of the kids' books, taking your kids over to the adult section or the fiction section, or leaving them in the child section if you're comfortable, and finding yourself something to read, finding something that you're interested in, and making the time to do that. One of the big things that a lot of families are using are podcasts. So there are so many podcasts that are free, available on the internet or through your phone, and listening to that while you're commuting, doing work around the house, or even if you're able to multitask, using that as another way to meet some of those needs. Even if it's, listening to something new, something that you've never, learned about before. There are a lot of really unique and interesting podcasts that are available online. Another thing is watching documentaries. So depending on whether you have cable or even if you have Netflix, there are a lot of documentaries that are educational in nature or intellectually stimulating. So finding those things that are important to you and making sure that you're making time during the course of the week to engage in that or watch those things. It could also be identifying a project that could be challenging, and that could be something that you're already doing at work, but putting more effort into it, or saying this is something I need to do for myself, if it's something that you're interested in, or doing it outside. So maybe volunteering for an organization that you've never done something for, being able to get involved in something that you've always wanted to do. There are lots of apps on our phones. The digital age is here, so there are lots of new apps. A lot of families I've talked to recently are doing foreign language apps, so downloading some of the free apps, engaging with that, and making time to do that for yourself every single day. I also recommend that parents will return to old hobbies or take up new ones. So even if it's something that you were doing before you had kids, finding a way to incorporate that into your day-to-day life. Just because you have kids in your life and they take up a ton of time does not mean you have to give up the things that are so important to you. Some parents really love to engage in art, something that they had done when they were younger, making time for that in your day-to-day life, or even writing. So journaling is a huge thing that can help decrease stress, being able to manage all of that. In terms of spiritual needs, I'm going to talk more specifically about mindfulness, but I think that For many people, religion is a huge part of their life, and just finding time to do that for yourself if you're not already doing that. And that can also be a source of social support as well. So I highly recommend that families that are religious are able to engage with that. And then community service is something I mentioned under intellectual needs, but also finding time to do that if that's something that you're interested in. When we're thinking about mindfulness, I want to speak briefly, if you're interested more in mindfulness after I'm talking about this, we do have our archived webinars on our Child Study Center website. So Amy DiBernardo did a wonderful webinar on mindful parenting that was from May of 2015. So if you scroll down, there is an archived list of all of our webinars that talks more specifically about mindfulness for parenting. But to talk about it briefly here, mindfulness originates from Buddhism and practice of being present and deliberately aware of what is going on around you. It's the act of being in control of your mind rather than letting your mind be in control of you. So it's really focused on full awareness and control, focusing on one thing at a time. Maybe it's describing what's around you, participating fully in that moment. Say to yourself, I am practicing mindfulness right now, and trying to remain non-judgmental. It's impossible to be mindful 100% of the time, so not judging yourself as if your mind wanders. So some examples of this could be just taking a mindful walk, observing the things that you're walking around. I commute in from Grand Central Station every morning. I walk 10 blocks, and sometimes I'm listening to my headphones, not paying attention to what's going on around me. So what I'll try and do is take my headphones off, try and be mindful, notice the things that I'm seeing, and being present and aware, and it's a much more pleasant walk than sort of the morning commute can be. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that I hear from parents in terms of self-care and how we overcome them. I think that a lot of the things that I spoke about are ideal, and it's like, okay, if I have the time, of course I would do those things. Of course I want to feel less stressed as a parent. But I think what I want to talk a little bit about is how to combat some of those. One of the most common things that I hear is that it's too expensive, and I hear you. Going to the spa is something that would be wonderful on a day-to-day basis, but it's not really always possible, if at all possible. But some of the things that you can do for free that aren't expensive, that can be sort of self-care oriented, is meditation or practicing breathing. YouTube is a great resource for finding videos and tutorials on how to do these things. And I also think that labeling things as self-care, I keep saying this, is a way to help you feel like you're taking better care of yourself. So, making time for doctor's appointments or balancing your eating or drinking more water, those are all things that we, quote unquote, should be doing. But being able to say, oh, I'm doing this because I'm taking care of myself, makes it a little more meaningful, makes it, maybe resonate more for you. So I recommend, make that doctor's appointment that you've been neglecting. Drink more water, make an effort to do that, put yourself on a behavior plan, reward yourself for doing that. You can also just listen to music and make that be an activity that helps you feel like you're caring for yourself more, or even organizing things in your home. Like that could be a way to help declutter and also help you feel like you're taking better care of yourself. I think the biggest sort of pushback that I get on self-care is this idea that I don't have time. And I think in an age where we are so connected sort of through the computer, I mean, we're talking to each other through this webinar here, we're so connected to our phones, we're so connected to the outside world. There isn't that thing where, you leave work and work is over for the day. So being able to make time can be incredibly difficult, especially with all of the activities that kids do. As a parent, it's probably so difficult to be able to find a minute of time. So what I recommend people do is start small. Don't make lofty goals of I'm going to spend an hour every single day taking care of myself, because the reality is that's going to be hard. And if you fail at that or you're not able to do that, it doesn't feel good. So making time, spending 1 minute a day even, just to decide what you'll do for yourself that day. I recommend that people do this when they're, getting up in the morning, when they're brushing their teeth even, taking the time while you're brushing your teeth to decide what you can do for yourself. And starting a policy of at least 5 minutes of me time. This can be, while you're doing dishes, listening to a song that makes you feel good. 5 minutes, that's all sort of we want to start with. And if that feels doable, being able to move up and making more time during the course of your day-to-day life. We know that habits take a little bit of time to build in terms of you know, they take time in terms of building them up, so making them more consistent from your day-to-day life. And so just doing 5 minutes a day over the course of a few weeks, then you might be able to move up in time a little bit more. The other thing that's incredibly important is being able to say no. So this idea of you don't have to say yes to every responsibility that comes up. I know that many schools have wonderful PTAs and they want parents to be involved in everything. And just being comfortable saying I don't need to be involved in every single thing, or being able to say no every once in a while, maybe to prioritize spending time with a friend that you haven't seen, or making time to prioritize maybe spending, a mindful or self-care time with your kids. So being able to say no is incredibly important. And I think we overextend ourselves because we want to do everything, but remembering that taking care of ourselves can be so important. So I want to sort of start to conclude here talking about some of our take-home tips. One thing that's important is making time daily for yourself, like I was saying, so starting small. So again, 5 minutes a day would be a great way to start. Self-care doesn't need to cost money. So, of course it's lovely to, be able to go to the movies, or to make time to go to the spa, or make time to go to that gym class that you've wanted to go to, but sometimes we can't afford those things. And self-care does not need to cost money. We can do it on our own. We can look up YouTube videos, and one of the benefits of having this digital age is being able to, look at things on the internet that are for free. Self-care improves your ability to parent, and it helps you feel more, by making yourself less stressed, it helps you be more effective as a parent. And I think that that's just a really important thing to remember, because the more stressed we are, the harder it is to get things done that we want to do. Again, you can engage in self-care alone or with your kids. So again, kids are at school during the day, or if they are in school at that time, being able to take time alone to care for yourself, or when your kids are around, being able to turn those activities into things that you enjoy too. So be it that you're going to the library with your kids and having that as an opportunity, or making play dates with other parents who you enjoy spending time with, and having that as an option as well. And then my final tip is do what works. I think we can't do these things perfectly. There's no perfect parent. There's always going to be stress as in parenting, and so doing what works is going to help you feel more confident. So if it's that I can only do 1 minute of self-care a day, I think that's enough. I think being able to say I'm making this effort for myself is going to help change your mindset, help you feel more positive and in tune. So I just want to provide a couple of resources. Again, as much as there's a love-hate relationship with the technology, but again, there are a lot of apps to help with some of this self-care and mindfulness. So Headspace has meditations, we have relaxed melodies, so those are sounds, and that can help you fall asleep if you're working on some of the sleep for your self-care. Anti-stress quotes, so looking at those to help you feel good, so you can save your favorite quotes and share them with others. Calm is another meditation app that helps, and the virtual hope box I think is a great toolbox with coping strategies. You can put pictures in there to sort of remind yourself of things that make you feel good, guided breathing, guided meditation, calming quotes, etc. So I want to just leave a couple of minutes for questions. Here's my contact information. And so we're going to get the iPad passed this way. Yeah, so this is a great question. So, so the question is, if parents work full-time, how does one find or make time to do this without guilt, or even just identify the time? And I think that's a great question. I was saying before, this idea that, we are so connected to work and so connected to our kids, and trying to make that time can be really hard. I think the commute can sometimes be a great way to do this. So even if it's sort of the walk from the subway to your office, is there a song that can help you sort of de-stress? Is there a way that you can do a mindfulness meditation in those, 5 minutes from the subway, or even the 10 minutes, depending on how far you live? Sometimes we commute with our kids, so maybe finding a way that, you can take a little bit of an extra walk before getting yourself to work. All right. We're waiting for some other questions, so please feel free to send those in. They're on the right side of your screen, and we can answer any of those questions that you might have. Thank you. So the question is a great one. So what should I do if I can't disconnect for self-care? I have a lot of the time, but still I get my mind off of what I need to do, or you get your mind onto what you need to do. So I think this is also a wonderful question. And I think it comes to this idea of practicing. So practicing self-care is incredibly hard, and doing it over and over again. I work on our dialectical behavioral therapy team here, and practicing mindfulness is a huge part of being a part of this treatment, so being able to focus on one thing at a time. To teach people to do mindfulness is really hard. One thing I recommend is starting with a mindfulness that might involve eating. So sometimes I'll have teens and parents in groups that I work in take a Hershey Kiss and mindfully sort of observe what it feels like in your hand, unwrapping it, really focusing in on the Hershey Kiss, trying not to let your thoughts wander. And if they do, just bring yourself back to the activity at hand. You don't want to judge yourself if you're not able to stay completely mindful, because it's impossible to be mindful. And then from there, you can sort of increase your ability to stay mindful to the task. Thank you. Any recommendations for learning how to slow down in the daily New York City pace? I wish I had an answer to that question. I can make a couple of recommendations, because I think this is something I myself struggle a bit with. I think in New York City especially, there's this expectation that you are on the go every single moment of the day. Depending on how you commute to work, I think that again is another way to sort of slow down a little bit. Or is it that you make the 15 minutes to take that lunch break? I myself am horrible at this, taking the time to like leave the building and walk around, being able to say, okay, I don't exist only in the space of work. If you can take the 15 minutes for lunch, that could be a nice way to sort of disconnect and try and slow down that New York City pace. I think the other thing is being able to say no to certain things. I think families are so extended in terms of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of activities. And so being able to say, okay, do we need to do all of these activities this weekend? Is there a way that we can cut down on maybe one? Can we sleep in a little bit later one day? Just to make it feel a little more, I guess, slow it down a little bit. Okay. So this is a wonderful question. So how do you deal with a person who is helping you with your child but adds to your stress as well? So I think that's a really, really difficult thing to deal with. So I think one thing is, so someone working with your child who's adding to stress, so it could be a teacher, it could be a caregiver, it could be, someone else in the life, being able to give them directions to what you think would be helpful to making your stress less. So phrasing it in a way that is directed about your child. So maybe it's that if it's a babysitter or someone who might be leaving things a little bit messy, saying, how can we make it so that it's a little bit cleaner when I get home or when I come back to my responsibility, to make it so that that feels less stressful? Or having a conversation with the individual saying, I'm feeling stressed by this. What are some ways that we can sort of change that? Being able to be upfront and be able to assert what your needs are. But I think that's a really challenging situation, and being able to have the conversation. So this is our last question here. What is a good way to reset your mindfulness in the midst of stress? I sometimes come home and am already irritated and feel like I take it out on my spouse or child, and then I feel guilty. I would like a good way to reset myself in that moment, to realize that whatever is happening is not a huge deal. This is definitely hard, and I think if you're coming home feeling irritated already, that's going to be a recipe to just continue to feel irritated because of all of the stress going on. If it's possible, one thing that might be helpful is before you walk in the door, stand in front of your door, be able to kind of take 2 minutes to sort of pay attention to yourself. So maybe it's that you're listening to a song, opening up an app, reading something on BuzzFeed or the news or whatever it is that you're interested in, and taking that minute to sort of take yourself out of that stressful moment. And maybe it's also making others aware in your family, hey, it wasn't such a great day, I could use a little bit of self-care time, if that's a possibility. I think these are all things that you have to try out and see how they go, but being able to say, I need a little bit of a break, or maybe I need a little bit of space. Okay, so I just want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. On behalf of the Child Study Center, we thank you for joining us. Once you leave the webinar, you'll receive a survey, and we'd appreciate if you could complete it. You'll receive a follow-up email within a day or two of today's presentation, and with a recording. And we hope that you can join us for our next webinar. I'm actually going to be on this webinar with Dr. Lori Evans, who's the Deputy Director of Psychology Training here at the Child Study Center. And we're talking about 13 ways to address suicide in the digital age. We hope you can join us. That's tomorrow, May 3rd. At 12:15 p.m. and you can look onto our website and Facebook and register for that webinar there. Thank you so much.